There it is.
I know.
Okay. Let's get started. I don't see read on any public comment. Okay. Minutes from September 7th.
Okay, I'll just. There we go.
I wanted to say, Simon, nice job with the thoroughness of the notes from the field trip to Mud Pond. Were you like recording us or something? I'm impressed with the detail you have from those conversations.
So I have one change right before number 6. And I said that the scouts would be visiting Catamount at the end of September, and I probably misspoke. It's actually the end of October to treat invasives.
Okay. Make that change.
And the only change at the bottom is approved by WCC on October 5th.
There you go.
Very observant, Laura.
Yeah, that was good. I breezed over that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to back Carl up here.
You're doing well.
I saw him the other day and he said he misses his 7 o'clock meetings. 7 a.m. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor or any abstent? Yeah. Any comments? Any additional discussion? Okay. All in favor of the minutes from approving the minutes as amended from September 7th?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Thank you, Simon, for that. So Simon, I just want to confirm, for some reason, I can't find the email that you sent out to the whole commission with the agenda for today. So I'm looking at the draft that you sent me. I've got,
So I can share the screen if that's helpful.
okay, that'd be great. And I could just confirm that what I'm looking at is the same as what you have.
It was sent on the September 30th, if that helps, at noon.
Ah, okay.
So we were
Thank
going to
you.
discuss the Vermont Master Naturalist project ideas next.
Yep. Okay.
And then just have 5-10 minutes on the annual report.
All right. So the times, yeah, everything's the same. I just need to find yours with the links to the materials. Okay. Great. All right. So Vermont Master Naturalist project ideas. Laura,
Okay.
did Simon connect with you on this? I was hoping you might be able to provide an overview of projects that Master Naturalist program has done in the past, and just to kind of give us an idea of the scope of and types of work that we might think about for upcoming projects.
Yep, let me give you just a little background and then I'll talk about the projects. the Vermont Master Naturalist, where the organization was started by Alicia Daniel, who is a professor who teaches in the field naturalist program at University of Vermont. And she started it in Burlington. And it's kind of like a field naturalist program, just a short version wrapped up in like 5 days. And she calls it the layer cake, where you go from bedrock to birds. So we just had last weekend a fantastic whirlwind tour of the Champlain Valley by a geologist named Craig Heindel. And it was really fantastic and everybody enjoyed it. The current group is called the Muddy Brook Vermont Master Naturalist Program. It's composed of 5 different towns instead of 1 town. And the Champlain Valley Conservation Partnership is sponsoring it. And they did already come up with some project ideas. And typically the students in the program go through the 5 training days, and because a lot of the projects take place in the summer, they then go off and they're required to spend at least 20 hours in the town or towns that they're a part of to volunteer in some way. And I know for when we did the Williston one in 2019, Melinda met with Alicia and myself and came up with a bunch of projects. And what we do then is we send this list of projects to the folks in the course, and they put their order of choice 1, 2, 3, and we try to place them in a group so that they work together. And the Champlain Valley Conservation Partnership already did come up with some project ideas, which I will tell you about. On Sunday when we met, we did let the students know about these project ideas and ask them what they might be interested in already. So we haven't formalized anything. We're still going to send them a list of projects. And so if there's any projects that the Conservation Commission thinks would be great, I'll add that to the list. So let me tell you some of the ideas that we have. And first of all, we have 15 students in this program, and 4 of them are from Williston. I think we have 4 from Shelburne, and then we have Heinsberg, South Burlington. Unfortunately, we didn't get anybody from St. George, though though we tried to, because I wanted all 5 towns of the Conservation Partnership represented. So some of the project ideas that we told them about, one was wildlife, basically large mammal tracking along the Muddy Brook. And this, the ones that would be interested in this would probably start this winter. And I know Jens Hilke said he had a lot of game cameras he could loan out for projects like this. And a lot of the students seemed interested in this one. So that would start this winter with cameras, tracking, observation. And all the towns are in the Muddy Brook watershed except Heinsberg. We also,
Laura, if I can just interrupt for a second. So what would be the goal of that? Just to identify the use of that corridor by large mammals?
Yep.
Okay.
And see what's there. Yep. I remember Jens, when he was talking to us about connections between corridors, he said riparian corridors are really important for those connections. Also, we said a cross-town series of walks, because public walks is something we did in Williston. and it was really successful at the Catamount Community Forest. And there were some people interested in setting that up. And the one that people are really all jazzed about is bringing habitat home, or grow wild, planting for pollinators. If you know what Homegrown National Park is, Doug Tallamy, an entomologist in Delaware, started this program where he's trying to get people to, if you get rid of invasives and plant native plants on your own property, you'll do a lot toward encouraging insects and birds, and everything that would use that, instead of thinking about setting aside whole areas of forest. I mean, something more needs to be done. And so that was his idea. So people are really interested in that. Okay, other things that could be done are a muddy brook cleanup. We did this also in the Williston Vermont Master Naturalist Program. Understanding connectivity on a regional scale was another one. In Williston, two of the students wrote the invasive management plan for Mud Pond Country Park, and that's a possibility, is working on a management plan. Someone mentioned exploring sources of pollution in the Muddy Brook, but I'm not sure if anybody would be very jazzed about that one, but that was one possibility. And
Why not? Sounds
yeah,
good to me.
if you were in the chorus, Eric, you could.
Yeah, that's perfect. Why do anything else?
And also developing interpretive trails. One thing that I thought for Williston might be a fun thing also is, I know we were talking about having more of a to-do for Green Up Day, and maybe doing like a bio blitz with iNaturalist could be a possibility. But I thought if anybody here had any ideas, I could put them on the project idea list.
Well, that sounds like a pretty good list already.
Oh, it is, yeah.
That's great.
mean,
yeah, that's
Is the idea to just have like as many projects so that they can like pick whatever sparks them, and we don't really like worry about narrowing it before we pitch to them, kind of like NR 206? Or is the idea for us to be like, ooh, we want these ones, and just pitch them the ones that we really hope get done?
So two things. If there's something you really hope gets done, I will make sure that they know that. And otherwise, yeah, they get to choose, and they look at the project list, and they just put down in order of preference 1, 2, 3, and then we'll kind of place them into groups. Sometimes people prefer to work on their own. I know that Terry, when she was in the Williston program, did a series of bird walks all year long, and that was really a great thing to do, in different areas in Williston.
One thing that I think would be super cool, and this connects to an opportunity that I think we're going to talk about maybe later this month, a grant opportunity through Vermont Urban and Community Forestry, is I think it would be really cool if we had a very updated street tree inventory with identified places for replanting. Like if we had a comprehensive survey of the street trees in Williston, their species, like roughly the shape that they're in, and then places that ash had been removed, but there was no replanting. So like essentially like identifying, if we were ever going to do street tree planting, where do we need those? And if there was somebody who was really interested in like climate vulnerability and like urban cooling and heating, and they wanted to have some integration of that type of index, like where are the hot spots, where is there like a lot of blacktop, I think that would be super cool. I don't know if that is the scale of these projects or if that's like bigger than, like they could just do like one chunk of town even.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great idea, Kim. One of the participants is Ann Janda. Do you know who that is? She is the energy coordinator for the Chittenden, I always get this wrong, the Chittenden Valley.
Chittenden County Regional Planning
Yes.
Commission,
Yeah. So,
CCRPC.
yeah, and she actually sent some interesting links that Eric, I can pass on to you because they've worked on, this is what towns should do for land use planning.
Yeah, I think something like that would be amazing for Williston to really think about, like I think we spend a lot of time on Conservation Commission thinking about our traditional forest, but urban forestry, while not my niche, is very important, and we could think about it more, I think. Especially in light of climate change.
Yeah, I agree. Mhm.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot lately as well, watching all the trees disappear in Maple Tree Place, for example, and elsewhere, and how that's removal of all those trees is setting the town back like 15 or 20 years in terms of how the town looks and feels and is treated, or as the cooling effect and whatnot that those trees will provide when they're
It also
Sure.
has, like, Eric, you may be able to speak to this a lot more than I can, but UVM a few years ago launched Sea Grant launched an urban watershed or watershed forestry partnership. And the impact on stormwater runoff is really significant.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kim. Allison Adams, who she's with Sea, I think she's a dual appointment at
Yeah,
Riverston
she
School
was
and
in
Sea
my
Grant.
lab for a little while.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
So she's Sea Grant's I don't recall her exact title, watershed forestry person. She's doing some interesting things. She could be an interesting person to bring in here, Simon, at some point and just talk a little bit about her work.
Mhm.
She has a kind of a neat blog that she puts together too.
I brought home a bunch of, when at the Lake Champlain Research Conference, Eric, which Eric has a major hand in, I brought home like a stack of stuff on like street trees, and now I'm looking around my office and I don't know what happened to it, but if I find it, Simon, I'll bring it to you.
Mhm. Yeah, that could also work nicely with the idea of homegrown national park, but gear it more toward the town, where if you're going to have a tree, you should maybe not mow under it. You should have a garden under it. Oh yeah, look at that. Really right of ways.
Lots
Exactly.
of resources.
That's perfect.
Vermont Green Street Guide, a resource for planners and building green infrastructure within our communities and resilient right-of-ways, a guide to community stewardship of Vermont back roads. So maybe like, I don't know, we have a lot of back roads in Williston also, but it seems like this one maybe could be the most relevant to what we're talking about. It's like
Green Street Guide.
Elise Shadler's crew put it together with a grant from State Forest Service, State and Private Forestry, one of those like Community Forest Challenge grants. So I don't know, I can drop it off if you're interested, Simon.
Yep, that'd be great.
I've had it since May or June and I actually haven't opened it.
Those things are great
But-
ideas, Kim. Thanks.
But you knew exactly where it was though. When you didn't have to move. Okay, thanks, Kim. So that's a good one. Updating street tree inventory and kind of doing some long-term planning around that. Other ideas or augmented ideas for what Laura's already suggested?
I'll just throw out, as I commonly do, something about human impacts with the trail system and in the town, and anything we can learn about, characterizing use or improving that system would be great.
Do we know yet what the two UVM groups are going to be working on this year? What topics? Or is it a given that they come to Williston? I wasn't sure.
So I'd be lying if I said I understood who all these UVM groups are. But Walt Pullman did call me a couple of weeks ago about the agritourism stuff, and what he said is they try and spread their work around Vermont. So their intention is they are going to somewhere in Georgia to do a project up there this year. He has put me in touch with, they've got an extension that sort of is doing work on agritourism. See if we can build like some sort of relationship with them to do sort of ongoing work. So I need to follow
Was
up
it
on that.
Lisa Chase?
So he put me in touch with someone called Hans Estrin. I know that Lisa Chase is she's in charge of the agritourism at UVM, but I didn't think, is she actually a UVM person? Or
Yeah,
is
she's
she is?
extension faculty, and
Right,
I
okay.
had talked to her about I
It
had
wasn't
talked to
clear
her
from the
about
website.
agritourism in Williston in like May, and she had said basically she was like, "Ooh, fascinating. Please keep me in the loop." And so I don't think that was like a volunteer to do work, but I do wonder if there's like an opportunity if she has like graduate students ever. Extension faculty don't teach always. I don't know, Gary, if you know if Lisa happens to teach. She might not have
Yeah.
classes, but
Yeah, I'm not sure right now. I think they can have up to 20% of their position teaching or something else outside their major responsibilities.
but for whatever it's worth, she was like interested and wanted to follow it. And she was particularly interested in our conversation about like what's allowed in the agricultural district, and like if this is a way for farms to hang on to their land. And she also heads up Tourism Research Center. So I just wonder if like if she's doesn't have any sort of like human power to offer, maybe she knows who would have human, or if there's grad students looking for projects, etc.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to know, so we didn't duplicate what they were doing. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, I saw on the Observer that the Ishams had an agritourism conference at their farm.
Yeah, that was this summer. Yep.
Other ideas?
I think this is quite a good list of, Laura, do you think that the 4 Williston folks would work together, or would they be doing independent projects?
I would think that the Williston folks would work together unless they're interested in doing, if people want to do the wildlife tracking, for example, along the Muddy Brook or riparian restoration, it might be members of all 5 towns that form a group, one group. So that would leave we'd still have some people that could form a group just for Williston as well. Well, thank you for those ideas. Those are great ideas.
So just out of interest, who was it that the Champlain Valley Regional Partnership that gave these ideas?
This was when we first introduced this idea to them, and it was I can't tell you who gave what idea.
I suppose, okay, so this happened a while ago.
A while ago.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's a nice webpage they have. I hadn't been on it before. The Champlain Valley Conservation Partnership hosted by South Burlington. It's impressive. We've come a long ways with that group. They do have a nice list of projects on there too, or not extensive, I guess, but a couple of projects. Okay, I guess the only other thing I was gonna add to that, Laura, which I don't know how much it's adding to it, but the idea about understanding connectivity on a regional scale, I was thinking about something like crosstown land conservation projects, or identifying crosstown land conservation opportunities. Maybe that's the same idea as what was already proposed, but that's one that was on my radar.
I
Okay.
know
I
we
mean,
talked, oh, go ahead. I know we talked a little while ago about, knowing what, when we were working with Hans, knowing what, yeah, Hans, knowing what, like Richmond was doing, knowing what,
Mhm.
Heinsberg was doing or with their conservation commissions.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. What's on their radars for land
And that would
conservation
be-
opportunities?
That would be
Was that-
interesting. I think the Champlain Valley Regional Partnership are interested in that sort of stuff, particularly the last meeting. Sarah from the South Burlington Land Trust, whose last name I've forgotten, was talking about sort of a particular opportunity down by the Winooski River where there's some land that she thought might be good for conservation on both sides of the Muddy Brook. And that's just sort of one person thinking of it. So there's bound to be many others.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Thank you, Laura. Let us know how that all shakes out.
yeah, I will. Thanks.
Okay. Next up, annual report. This thing that we know happens every year and it takes us forever to get it knocked out.
Okay. So I think Gary has just sent me through something about Carl, so I can slot that in.
Great.
We've got Reed and Laura both done something on their respective elements here. I know Eric was going to do this element, the Mud Pond Country Park.
Correct.
So I don't know if we ever figured out who was going to write about these two projects here. So the Allenbrook Boardwalk, if I could actually do that, I think I know enough about that to include that, and that might actually be a good one for a picture.
Yes.
Is the Talcott project when it says volunteer, is that actually the research project that's also in Catamount?
I can't remember now.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too, Kim.
It must be, because there's not another project in Talcott, is there?
Yeah, it seems odd to call it a volunteer project, but yeah, I'm not aware of any other one.
I would be happy to write a little blurb about that project, although Gary, it's your project if you want to write it.
Yeah, I can, if that's it. I mean, who would know if there were any other volunteer projects?
So I guess that would be me.
I'm gonna say that I don't think there are, because I go there sometimes and I haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, Simon, you would know best, I guess.
Yeah, I can try to whip something up on that. I assume it has to be pretty short. Are we still trying to keep this at
Yeah, that was
age total or something?
So
that was gonna be my question too. The
think-
A list here is supposed to be 1 page, right?
So what I think we were going to do is try and keep it to 2 pages and have our sort of full report for the annual report on the Conservation Commission webpage, and then slim it down to a single page for the printed report.
Oh, okay. So the content that's on the screen now could be part of the full or longer report, and then we would then pare it down. Okay. Got it.
So do we have anything on here about what's going on at Catamount with the forestry project there?
So my view is that that would be an FY. Well,
I mean, it started.
Yeah.
It's probably
Yeah.
more, it's probably farther along than what's going on at Talcott, although
So
that's a piece of it.
I think I looked into this, and I think the thing that Ethan did with what I call the Brontosaurus project, because that's how I remember it, was done in FY22.
Right.
And then the next big element of it is going to be, he's talking about August next year, which would make it FY24. So, or maybe it was FY21 where he did the Brontosaurus, because I looked at this for the Catamount report, and I think it was FY21. So I think, I mean, I can look into if there's anything that we can report, but I think we might be sort of between large projects on that.
I guess
Well-
the signage would be the biggest, the signage that he put up for the upcoming job and the self-guided tour.
I can add a line that consultation has started on the forthcoming project, but I think the signage and the tour were all done in this financial year.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
true.
it'll be
Right.
for next year. This is why it gets so complicated.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the Talcott would fall on the same timeline as Catamount. So maybe we don't need to mention anything there yet either.
Right, we can have this conversation in 2 years' time.
And then the Catamount Community Forest will have their own page, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I'm confused. Are we erasing that sentence about volunteer at Talcott and Allenbrook?
So the sense I'm getting is that there was no volunteer project at Talcott, but there might have been one at Allenbrook.
There
Was that-
definitely, I really think that the work at Talcott is part of that climate project that's also at Catamount.
Yeah.
Unless
Yeah, it's the
there's like
same
something
project.
else that we have, that I'm totally forgetting. I guess like, well, one thing that happened that like kind of petered out because Ralph Tersini left UVM, and I can't remember like when this started or when it happened, but there was a conversation with like a Boy Scout group about creating a connection through Talcott into Catamount. And I feel like it was like before Melinda moved into her new role. So maybe that, and it didn't really go anywhere, but like maybe that's what it was referencing. I
Was
have no
that
idea.
the camp over there that the scouts wanted to?
Yeah, they really wanted to use it, and they were thinking like if they could park at Catamount, and like there is that little connection that's like underutilized, if they could park at Catamount and then use that connection and extend it down to the camp and like volunteer to refurb the cabin, but it like didn't,
So I think the cabin,
like
I know
the
there's a
email chain just like, go ahead.
sorry, the cabin I know is a project that the town manager and I are going to be working on with the scouts this upcoming year.
Yeah.
Refurbing that.
So I don't know like if that, but like part of that, there was
Just
like
getting
at
the
least a
roots
few
to it.
months where part of
Yeah.
the conversation around that was like also working on the trail in Talcott, because that would have been the access point originally. I don't know if it's still the access point.
And they don't know where the easement is, right? Or they're not sure it still exists.
The easement to access Talcott.
Yeah. It was
Oh, well,
through
UVM has an easement,
Oh, UVM, true.
but I don't know that, and I don't know if anyone, because it's UVM's parcel and they have an easement like near the golf course. But we don't have an easement because it's not ours. It's UVM's land,
Right.
which Gary might know specifically where that parking spot is, but it's basically like a van size parking spot.
Sorry, I had to step out. What what did you say, Kim?
I was saying like, we don't have an easement to access Talcott. UVM has an easement to access Talcott because it's UVM's, but it's just like one parking spot, right? Like near the golf course.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
It's like, at one point, Tony told me it was like a van width, and that.
Yeah,
also-
I know we have a right of way through part of the golf course to get to that. In fact, that's one of we're trying to figure out how to access that area for logging even is a little tricky.
So that's all to say, like, there was like a flurry of emails for a few months about like, could the Boy Scouts also help with this trail and that therefore access and blah, blah, blah. And that was in Talcott. And so maybe this is me saying, this is a long-winded way of me saying, maybe that 2 words in the bullet point was about Boy Scouts.
What was the project, the volunteer project at Allenbrook? Was that the planting of trees? Was that Chapin?
That's what I was thinking of, Terry. It was Chapin's tree planting project that he did with the school at Allenbrook
Yeah,
School.
that's right.
And that was more of a sustainable Williston project, maybe? I don't know if it was.
I don't remember.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe Reed could figure out who we need to go to for that.
Okay, so maybe I'll speak with Reed. I think he's in Dallas or something at the moment. I can
Yep.
speak with Reed when he gets back.
All right, and then Reed for the B list. Reed's also going to do something on hazard tree work. I do not remember what that was at all.
Is that the emerald ash trees?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
Someone wanted emerald ash trees to be included in, like a de facto. If you've got an ash tree, it's by definition a hazard tree.
And was that Laura went around with, didn't you go around with some folks to go to all the trailheads to identify?
Melinda and I did that.
Yeah.
Just I mentioned that the only one was at Mud Pond Conservation Area, parking area.
Is that, just, I don't know if this is the time to bring this up, but is that one that we should really think about treating? And I did put that sign on it because it was right there, but for the emerald ash, but is that one that we should be at some point considering treating?
That could be if we talk about EAB in a meeting, I guess we could do
Like
that.
down the road, but now that it's here, it's a pretty prominent tree right there in the parking. But anyway, that can be for another time.
Okay. And then we had potentially green up, and I'll do the Mud Pond Conservation Area. Hopefully,
we can probably delete that because I think we're covering it in the planning
perfect.
department thing, unless
Okay.
anyone feels strongly it should be left in.
I don't know. I think if we're trying to reduce space, then
Yeah.
reducing redundancy will help with that too. And then we have that last sentence that just kind of wraps up some of the other smaller things we worked on. So that sounds good. All right. Anything else on annual report?
No.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Next up, so do we have anybody coming in for this next agenda item?
So as a couple of people did come to the site visit who said they would attend. I said it would be at 8 a.m. So
Okay.
I don't know if we just want to maybe have a look at the urban and community forest grant programs. It was on the
Yeah, that was going to be my
staff
suggestion.
report.
Let's skip ahead to staff report and
Yeah.
then come back to the Bud Pond thing at 8 o'clock. So yeah. So this urban community forestry grant opportunity, this one came across my inbox and Kim's inbox, and I think we were both kind of thinking the same thing. It's a potential opportunity for the town to get some funding to do some street tree work, right, Kim?
Yeah, exactly. And I think in my mind, I think everybody knows that like every time we cut down an ash tree and just leave like a bare patch of dirt, my heart breaks a little bit. And so I was sort of imagining that it connects to the project idea that I had suggested earlier, that if we like identified some key places where trees had been removed and they were there wasn't interplanting done, which or replanting done, which I think is the majority of places that there has been removal, that we could apply for funds to replant native, more resilient species. And I feel like we have like a pretty solid wealth of forestry expertise in this conservation commission, such that we could like pick a really great mix of trees that's going to have a high success rate. Gary, I'm looking at you. Or get, you know, recommendations from Elise and company. But yeah, it's money to do work that I think the town would really benefit from, given our EAB, particularly given our EAB strategy and just development patterns.
Do we know what Public Works has in their plans? I know they took down a lot over on the Best Buy side, and they've got like 6 trees marked that are definitely EAB trees. And they have been planting some, but does anybody know where they are in their?
So I talked to Bruce about this yesterday. He is already going for this grant for the EAB. So there's two pots of money, if you like. So there's the Communities Caring for Canopies, which is for small scale projects, and then there's the Growing Urban Forests in the Face of Emerald Ash Borer. So Bruce is applying for the larger of those two, and he's going for $20,000 for that to plant trees. So he's been talking to the people who are in charge of the grant for some time now. He did mention to me that the original grant requirements didn't include growth centres, which is where the funding we want is going to be directed to the Maple Tree Place area. So he worked with Matt in our office to get them to change that. So he's going to be applying for that to plant trees to replace those ones that he's taken down. He also mentioned to me, and this is not out anywhere, that he keeps getting told by the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Commission that there is a much bigger grant coming down the pipeline than this. But there are no formal details yet, which he's keeping an eye on, because that would really sort of help us out with tree planting.
Elise told me that also, that
Yeah.
I think it's infrastructure money,
Right.
and that they just haven't, but it's unclear what it's actually gonna be for. Like it's being shaped right now. So
Yeah.
I think it's possible that it will be a good fit. So that's great. So somebody's already, so does that mean like we're like, okay, hands off, or does he want advice about like identifying locations and species?
I think we can definitely give him some make some requests of him for species. That would seem logical to me. I think, locations, I'd probably need to get into the details with him. I feel like I need to know more about what Bruce is doing, so I can relay that to you guys.
It sounds like.
Good luck.
Bruce is doing whatever Bruce wants to do. No.
So it sounds like the Community Caring for Canopy is still available, would be a.
Yeah, so that was going to be what I was going to ask about, is that, Chapin had a lot of success with doing his little tree planting project down by the Allenbrook, and I was impressed. I went to, I guess everyone knows he had foot surgery and he wasn't able to water them about a month ago, and I called in just to see where it was happening, and he managed to get, I think, 8 people attended a meeting, and that was just talking about watering the trees whilst he was, unavailable to do it. And I was looking at that sort of the small sums that are available, 1 to 5,000 with a 1-to-1 match, and just wondering if there is any like project ideas that maybe we can build on. That sort of thing with a little bit of money could go a long way. I don't know if anyone has any ideas. Looking at the eligibility, I think it does need to be on want to understand sort of town land, and generally like the public places like parks, or school buildings or municipal property.
I think it
But
sounds like,
it can also go to like programs and building capacity to do this sort of thing.
right. I think it sounds like a great idea. I think we could maybe focus it more on the non-street trees, which would apply to parks and the areas around Allenbrook that Chapin's working in, and maybe even help us determine what trees are worth using pesticides on to try to get them to survive some of the existing ash trees. That makes kind of sense to me. And that way it wouldn't be interfering with anything that Bruce is planning, because he, focuses more on the street trees.
Yeah, he's taking care of the ash trees that are in the town. But I did mention that one ash tree at Mud Pond and at Catamount, there's 11 trees that are being, that got treated this year. Is there, I wonder, and Laura, you can speak to this, we're doing a lot of getting rid of invasives, but would it be a good idea to maybe plant some natives after we get rid of? I know that, there's a hope that the natives are going to come back and regenerate, but would it be worthwhile maybe planting some native species?
So I think I was just looking at the criteria, and I think we can't spend it on municipal forest land.
Okay.
So invasives and parks, that would be a yes.
We can spend it on training for the tree warden.
Right.
Oh yeah, we got our tree warden idea.
Yeah, so there is a healthy list of things that we can spend it on, which does include removal of public ash trees, but there's also ash borer and other pest preparedness, public outreach, program development, plan development, tree inventory, tree maintenance, tree
Can we
planting. So
marry it with a potential student project, or with a with a master naturalist project? I really think, do we have an updated street tree inventory? Such a valuable planning tool.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much it's changed since the last time we made an assessment. Do you think it's been dramatically different than we
Given
did
the
10
number
years
of
ago?
trees that have been cut down.
Yeah, I know there's some that have been cut down, but I think the ones that, the majority of them, 95% of them are probably the same.
Is it 10 years old, do you think, at this point?
I would guess so, but I'm not sure.
Even just updating the existing plan with mortality and condition, and if the environment, the really good street tree inventories even contain information about what's happening around the tree, right? Are the roots cracking the sidewalk, blah, 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 blah. Again, not my area. I really know nothing about urban forestry except that they involve trees.
But also connecting it with what Bruce is doing. I mean, what are his plans for what's next, and what's the phases he's putting in? Yeah.
And I think a cool thing that I have seen communities do with street tree inventories is if you do it really well and super detailed and identify this tree is the sidewalk is cracking and its root system is clearly in trouble or whatever, then that just having that information can let you leverage other grants. So I don't know, it just seems like a useful planning tool. But I mean, also if we're saying there's other things we need, then maybe it's just one thing on the list.
well, I think it's, that's certainly an interesting idea that might be worth exploring with the field naturalist program if there is a group that wants to go in that direction. Laura, do you know what the time frame is for the selection of projects for the field naturalist program?
Yeah, February is when they're,
I was hoping maybe it'd be like next month.
I wonder if we should reach out to Chapin and Sustainable Williston to try to see if that's something they're continuing on, because that was they really wanted to plant, I remember they wanted to plant an orchard and, plant more trees. So, this might be something that we could work with them on.
Yeah, definitely. Simon, perhaps we can get Chapin in here at an upcoming meeting and
Yeah.
talk through it a little bit with him.
I mean, that'd be good because I think I haven't really had time to look at this grant or even think about it a huge amounts. And I think it'd be good if everyone had more time
Good.
just to review it and figure out what we want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, this, 1 to 5,000, I don't think the match is necessarily going to be a massive reach.
Yeah, I was
going
going to ask about that part. I mean, if I was looking at the match requirements, and you can use volunteer hours. So that's one way to get in kind. I don't know what we have for.
So we've
cash,
got a
but-
certain amount of trail. We've obviously got our sort of 10,000 trail maintenance budget. So depending on what we're doing, if it is related to that, we might be able to use that. But we can have a look as part of budget season about where we can source that money.
Sounds good. And then just to come back around to the grant that Bruce is applying for.
Yeah.
I don't know how you'd want to approach this, but if he wants to run his ideas past the Conservation Commission, I'm happy to make time on the agenda for that. Also happy to produce a letter of support for whatever the proposal is, assuming we support it.
Yeah, I
I
would
support
definitely-
planting more trees.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see a more diversity of species. I mean, we've been planting sycamores, and I don't think that's kind of been in his mix at all. I'm not sure what, over near Home Depot, they planted a bunch, but they kind of look similar, So it would be nice to get a diversity and, Gary, what's the tree that you've been working with? The
American chestnut. Yeah, we'll have some small ones available this spring to
Yeah.
maybe put in as street trees in the drier areas. It doesn't do as well in wet areas, whereas sycamore does do well in wet areas.
right.
When will you have them?
This spring.
Oh, that's such a cool idea. And that could have an education component to it.
Yeah, I'm working with Chapin to put in a bunch in his area, in the upper area, less wet areas that he's working in, and also in Burlington and other places too.
Great.
A comeback story if there ever was one.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thanks everyone. That was a good conversation. Okay, so what do you think, Simon? Are we about ready to do the mud pond conservation?
Yeah, I
Agenda
think so.
item.
If we just give it, Adam is here and Christine, who attended the site visit, is also here. Maybe if we just give it a couple of minutes, because I think two
Okay.
of the other people who attended mentioned they might come down. I'll just check
Okay.
there's no one waiting outside. Hold on.
So I guess, while we're waiting, just maybe continue this, the talk about variety of species, and the project next year for logging, that's kind of around species for climate change. And were some of the ideas were tulip poplar. What are some of the other species that could be interplanted in town?
I know we had put together a list of species in the plan that we wrote that in
Yep.
theory, Bruce is supposed to be at least checking out. And I don't know, how that's working, but we could put together a list. I mean, the plan included many, because that's the point. We're trying to have a diversity of species so we can, at least some will survive during the changing climate. But I can't say a whole bunch off the top of my head, but it should be easy to put together a list of a dozen species or so that that will hopefully add diversity and hopefully do well.
So was that a report that you put
Yeah,
together?
the Conservation Commission worked with Bruce to put together a emerald ash a plan for responding to ash borer.
So that
I
was
just
in
also sent
2015.
Simon a
Yeah.
selection guide that like
Huh, do you,
It's like-
Simon, do you have a copy or do you have a link to that? Or
I
I'd love to
just put
see-
it in the chat.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think you sent that
Yeah,
to
I can
me
take that.
direct,
Good.
Kim.
Thank
you.
Just
So,
send
like,
everyone-
the-
hold on one
We
moment.
don't, yeah, we don't have to, I don't
Is
think,
that something?
reinvent the wheel. We
Yeah,
have the one that we
Mhm.
made before, and then this one is like, I don't know, very handy. It basically is like.
I
you
don't
pick a
see,
case
I
study.
don't see it in the chat. Maybe I'm,
I can only send the chat directly to
Oh, right,
Simon.
the security features to stop Zoom bombers.
Yeah.
perfect,
let me-
okay, no problem.
It's less a problem on this than it seems to be a problem for DRB for some reason.
That's crazy.
Ah, there you go. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. Yeah.
We have to change the Zoom meeting ID annually for the DRB.
Yeah, I can probably find a copy of that emerald ash borer plan and
So
throw it
it's-
in the chat.
It's on the, I assume it's the one that we approved, but there is one on the town website from 2015. I just Googled Williston, Vermont Town EAB Management Plan, and it brought me to the town has an emerald ash borer web page with some information on it, and then a couple of links at the bottom,
Okay,
Good.
great.
Thanks, sir.
yeah, including an ash inventory, which presumably was also done around 2015. All right, how are we doing, Simon? We ready to go with the?
Yeah, we're at 8:01, so we can get started.
All right, so yeah, so here we are. So today's conversation is about Mud Pond Conservation Area and some work that's proposed to happen there for improving the trails system for a bicycle connection over to the Mud Pond Country Park. And we have a couple of folks on the call today. I don't see anybody in the room in person.
No.
Okay. So we have Adam from Fellowship of the Wheel and then Christine. Adam, would you like to say a few things about the project?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all again, somewhat. We started a adaptive improvements last year with this group here on the Mud Pond Country Park side of South Road. And in those discussions, there's, a lot of support for this project and some ideas discussed around, it'd be great if they could use the conservation side, the trail that goes to the road crossing to keep people off the road. And, along with that comes, sort of different challenges that would be best to have, all trail users be able to use that link of trail. I mentioned in our meeting on site this Saturday that like an adaptive rider may be, seemingly like you may not know it's an adaptive rider. It could be somebody with, some sort of impairment that, that defining it as like a 3-wheel or 4-wheel bike with somebody that has like mobility issues is not always like the definition of adaptive. And it could be someone with autism that needs a guide. And in those circumstances, like the water gets a little muddy when it comes to, sort of classifying an adaptive rider. And not to mention kids and families that want to travel to the trails, like in terms of safety, it would be great to have, everybody have access, as you can see there on the map, without having to go on South Road with some of the speeds and the slight blind curve that's there. So that was sort of the inspiration for looking at this section of trail that's highlighted on the map there and proposing a few upgrades that would make it more suitable for adaptive bike travel and, improvements for all multi-use trail users. So that's a little bit of the background there. The first red line that's shown from sort of the parking area is a reroute to go around sort of the hillside on a more even grade. There's identified on the map right there, there's 2 orange circles, which I think classify a steep grade. And if you notice throughout the rest of the conservation side, there aren't really, I don't think, any other steep grades throughout that network. So, for any trail user that's going to enjoy this land, like, they have to navigate 2 steep grades right off the bat. So this reroute sort of wraps around the hillside and removes that steep grade. One of those steep grades in particular has what we call like braided desire ways because it is so steep. People are looking for lower angle areas of trail or creating lower angle areas of trail to try to avoid that steep pitch. So this reroute would sort of follow the contours around that height of land. And it would be slightly benched so that it would shed water. And then it would tie into the existing trail. And we sort of feel that this is a really good solution for all trail users and something that is more sustainable in the long run. You see the grade, the second steep pitch that you're going down as you enter the trail system will only continue to worsen and degrade as trail use continues. So this would provide a much longer sustainable solution. And then the 3 X's towards the actual road crossing are a stream water crossing and a couple areas that are sort of persistently wet in spring and fall and heavy rain times. And so these areas would be, bridged or boardwalked, which again would cut out on any of the like trail braiding that can happen when those areas are wet as people sort of seek drier routes. So these are some of the infrastructure needs to make it passable for an adaptive bike, but they are very much applicable to all trail users.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. Does anybody have any questions? I have a couple of things I can ask Adam, but if I would give other folks a chance to go ahead.
So unfortunately, I wasn't at this site visit that you guys did a while ago, but I guess one concern I have, and maybe hopefully you guys discussed this, was, once we start to allow biking through here, what's going to prevent them, or do we have ideas of them just going throughout the whole trail, all the way around the pond and such? I mean, what's going to prevent that from happening?
Signage. Signage is key. So at there's one intersection there. I believe it already has a no biking sign, and there's another. The other intersection further along, closer to the road crossing, also has a little handmade sign that says, biking trails this way, which, I spoke on Saturday that we don't really sign something like this way to the bike trails because they're multi-use trails. And in fact, like several of the work days that we've done out there would say that about 80 to 90% of the folks we see in the Mud Pond Country Park side are actually, walkers, birders, runners, as opposed to predominantly bikers. So it is sort of used and shared by all. But at those 2 intersections, having very explicit no biking signs or a sign that says, to Mud Pond Country Park trails. I think people know and understand that the Mud Pond Country Park side versus the conservation side is biking versus non-biking. That's something that we we discussed at the meeting on Saturday, we don't necessarily have to publicize that this trail has access. We can communicate with Vermont Adaptive, but you know, in thinking about that a little bit more, it probably is wise to, you know, communicate, you know, this is a segment of trail that can be used to access the trails on the Mud Pond Country Park side that does not require traveling down the road. But, you know, through my work in advocacy with this organization, like there's people in all facets of life that choose to ignore rules. And if somebody is going to choose to do that, they're probably already out there doing that, whether intentionally or unintentionally. You know, I have a friend that was riding his gravel bike and cut through that area and didn't know that it wasn't no biking. He came from the other side and then got partway into it and was like, whoa, this is not this is not the right place, and sort of turned around. You know, versus like other people throughout our membership know and appreciate the space and will sort of respect the access to the trails without wandering off into the other trails. You know, it's the same way that how do we prevent people from going in there right now? There's a no biking sign right there at the entrance. And I'm sure 99% of folks abide by that. So that's sort of how we, you know, mitigate any unintended users from wandering off on the other two splits along the way there.
Thank you. I think we just need to make it extremely clear that there's no biking in there. And unfortunately, we've had issues in the past. So I think everybody's doing a better job now, but I would be a little concerned about that, at least keeping an eye on it near the beginning.
I do think Adam raised a good point, which is that his friend that rode through from the other side is not the only person I've heard of doing that. And I think because multiple people have done it at this point and have like Strava'd their ride, it like shows up on the heat map as like a connection, and also on like the Vermont Class 4 map, it shows up as a Class 4 road. And so maybe we just need signage on both sides. Like, I don't think people are like purposely like ha ha ha, but they're like, ooh, cool, Class 4, I'm gonna go check it out, and then nope.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a bike trail, Mud Pond Conservation Area, when you compare it to the country park. So
No, but the spirit of gravel is becoming this. I can't believe I just said the spirit of gravel, but like the the like ethos in gravel is to like ride your underbiking is like this thing that's becoming popular, to like ride your bike that's inappropriate for the trail you're riding on. So I think people are like looking at maps for like cool connections, and it would just be good to have a sign of like, not here.
All right. Other points that I just want to emphasize is that from my understanding from the construction of the proposed route, tree removal will be fairly minimal, and that I just want to confirm that the existing trail will be abandoned from the trailhead up to the point of the intersection with the new trail. That's correct, right, Adam?
Yes, that's what we would recommend, is to sort of take some of the tree branches and like leafy material and sort of reclaim that trail, comb it over so that you don't even notice it's there.
And then when we're on our site walk, there was some, we were looking at the entry point onto South Road from the Conservation Park side. And I don't know, has there been additional conversation or anything about how to make that a smoother transition up onto South Road? Because it was kind of an awkward point, right?
We could do, I think what we had discussed is sort of like you could get like a yard or two of gravel or sure pack. It's already been done there once before, it looks like, and you could just sort of reinforce that to make that grade a little more shallow as you approach the road.
I think Adam, previously mentioned the point that I think an adaptive rider can get up that at the moment, but it's making the grade easier, but also not making it so shallow that people just blast straight out onto South Road without thinking about it.
Right, that was I think part of our concern was that you almost need to, you kind of need, well, you don't kind of, you have to stop there before crossing onto South Road. And if there is a platform or whatever where people can do that, then they're more likely to stop rather than, as you said, Simon, blasting up onto the road to get up that hill.
And the other part of that that I think about is just having enough material there that you can actually get yourself sort of up to the level of the road for a good sight line. Because when you go up at the sort of pitch that it's at right now, you don't really get a good view both directions until you're pretty much on the road.
Yep.
We did talk a little bit about asking Public Works to put some signage there. I do live off of South Road, and it's a dangerous place, and people are going pretty fast without even knowing that there could be a person crossing. So that would be really good.
Public Works are okay putting signs there just to warn people about pedestrians in the road.
Right.
All right, thanks, Adam. Any other questions on this project?
I just wanted to say, I think it's a fantastic upgrade, just for, not just adaptive riders, but for people who are walking, because I know people have trouble, especially in the winter, with that steep hill. So I think it's a fantastic upgrade.
And the other thing I just wanted to mention, so we'll give Christine an opportunity to speak if she would like. And we said we did have a couple of other people who attended the site walk. And I thought we just want to relay their comments to you. So we did get Mark Simon, who's a neighbouring resident who did attend. He doesn't support the change, so he believes it will ruin the sort of physical character and peacefulness of the conservation area, turning into a place more like the country park, which is why he doesn't support it. So I think, we acknowledge that. I think Adam mentioned that they can look at the way they treat the trails, so they're not sort of that hard compacted earth. We do let the pine build up to maintain more of that character. We also had Suzanne Dijon, who is a local resident as well, who I think probably, to summarize, sort of regrets the introduction of bikes, as I think she enjoys walking her dogs there, but does acknowledge the benefits that it would provide a safe route for bikers that doesn't go down South Road. And then Christine and Derek also attended. Do you feel, Lauren, do you feel that's an accurate representation of what Mark and Suzanne said? Yeah. And Christine and Derek, they're regular walkers. I don't know if you want to speak.
Yeah, I just, my husband's actually taking our dog, who regularly loves Mud Pond Country Park, to the groomer today. But yeah, we're both, I'll say, walkers and bikers. My husband has biked the country park a number of times. And kind of our thoughts is, from a hiking and walking perspective, getting rid of that steep slope grade is awesome. Would be really nice to have that going through there, and then the upgrades with the bridges across the muddy areas, especially in the spring, and kind of that transition into winter would be beneficial to hiking. I also think we shared our comments and our experience at the park, both on the conservation and the country park side, that we pretty much hiked there almost every weekend during kind of the height of COVID, because it was one of the low traffic, low population places. And I can say probably in the last 2 years, the number of bikers I actually saw on the country park side was minimal, that I actually saw and ran into. I mean, I think it gets used, but because of the setup and the makeup of the park, you don't actually necessarily see other walkers and riders when you're there, because it has a one-way flow. So I think the number of folks that would be going through the conservation area, people will be surprised that they don't actually notice any change with, with a change to the flow or an allowance of bikers to use that. But I think from a safety perspective, it's a great upgrade.
And I think the point was made that by a couple of people that the South Road access obviously remains, and
Yep.
probably a not insubstantial number of people will continue to use that because it does provide a quicker and more direct access.
And a lot of mountain bikers are just going to go. they're not going to
just
change
wanna get
their
their ride
ingrained
in.
habit.
Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
Great. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Anything else, Simon, or anyone else on the call?
So just to say, because I said I would, people see that email? So this is just
Yep.
an email from someone who's a keen cyclist in Williston. Just an email of support. I'd bring to your attention.
So this is interesting. So this is presumably this person is not an adaptive cycler. Obviously
No.
can't tell that, but I guess this goes to Gary's point. We need to make it clear to the cycling community that this may not be available to standard two-wheeled bicycles, correct?
I don't think we can differentiate between, once we say cyclists can use this, I don't think we can say adaptive cyclists. Is that your point? I think this will be for everyone.
Yeah, I thought this upgrade was only to be accessible for walkers and hikers, obviously, but also only for adaptive cyclists.
We did talk about people with dogs and people with children on how it would make a much safer.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I guess, I think it was for really all bikers. But
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah, but is that, I don't want to speak.
That was my my understanding. I don't think we can police it only being for adaptive bikers. I think Adam can probably message in the communications they do selectively to adaptive riders, notifying them about this in terms of like the promotion as a way to get to the country park. But I think that would be quite difficult to police. And also, I don't know if we can say you can use this route if you're an adaptive rider, but you can't use it if you're someone who's taken their two kids for a bike ride or someone who's just not very confident on roads. Mud Pond is, I'm not a massive mountain biker, but I understand it is like an entry point for mountain bikers before you graduate onto more difficult terrain.
Yeah, I would just sort of add or reiterate that sort of at the beginning of this conversation, I was stating that adaptive riders may not always appear as an adaptive rider and to the common eye, and sometimes they oftentimes are accompanied by conventional two-wheel bikes, or could even be on a conventional two-wheel bike if they have autism or a slight visual impairment and need a guide in front of them. So I've seen, Kingdom.
That's fine. I guess I just misunderstood then. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the point we brought up to when we met is that a lot of mountain bikers probably will just choose to continue using the same route on South Road just to get to the trail and not necessarily take that. I mean, it's no guarantee, but so I don't think it's going to turn into a highway, of bikers. I think it's going to be, and maybe, in the first few weeks of it being open, maybe there could be like a greeter, someone there to explain, the choices people have, and that might help the flow.
I would just like to add another point for the folks that were not there on this Saturday, but the sort of to Mark's point about this is development, and he's not wrong in some respect, but from Fellowship of the Wheels standpoint, Mud Pond is a multi-use space that, we're very fortunate to have access. And our, intent as an organization is not to, further develop and create we're not trying to create a huge influx of riders. We're trying to provide safe access for, existing users and a small underrepresented population in the adaptive front. Mud Pond is a local sort of community resource. So compared to some of our other networks where we do host group ride programming, which we don't do at Mud Pond, for respect of the neighbors, and like the parking pressure. It's not a network that we try to, it just doesn't fit in the sort of long-term strategic planning to have like more riders attending that park. It's really just maintaining what is there to the best of the ability for all users. And, I think Han's point there is, he's a local, he rides there pretty regularly. And this is an upgrade that he would support because it means getting off that section of road where people are traveling fast, and there's a bit of a double blind curve there, coming from both directions, sort of at that speed. So, that's where we debate that, just adaptive users versus all users. In general, like Fellowship is not trying to push a lot of our membership to go ride Mud Pond, but it's a resource that exists, and we want to see safe access for, all the users. And as Simon mentioned, sort of the terrain makes it most approachable for, newer riders, youth riders. It's a great resource for all of those local Williston residents that are getting into mountain biking, and, want to graduate to larger networks with more advanced terrain down the road.
Great. Okay, thanks, Adam, and apologies for the confusion on my part on that. All sounds good to me. Any other questions or comments?
I just wanted to say that Mark Simon was fine with the upgrades to the trails. He was simply worried about mountain bikes on that section, that it would turn into a highway. But to Adam's point, I don't think that will happen.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else, then I guess we will close the public conversation and move on to the next item on our agenda.
I just want to
So-
say that I think this is great. Awesome work.
Yes, thank you, Adam, and everybody.
Thank you.
So just before we do that, just next steps. Well, there we are. So we do need to update the management plan. This element in particular. So I can look at just changing that and also going through in a bit more detail to make sure there's no other references that need change. So I'm sensing from the commission that we do want to proceed with this. So I'll look at updating this, and then I perhaps haven't gone about this in the most efficient manner, but we do need to unfortunately put it in the newspaper that we're changing it before we take it to the select board, to allow people to formally comment. So I'll do that as well. And then I think before we put it to the select board, I would like to bring this back once we've done that with the changes shown, to get a vote from the Conservation Commission.
Okay, that sounds fine, although I would think that the Conservation Commission as an advisory board to the select board would vote on it before it goes to the select board.
Yeah,
wouldn't
sorry,
we?
that wasn't clear. I mean,
Okay.
I would like you guys to officially sign off on it by vote
Okay,
before it goes to select board.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so there's some more, so the public comment period is going to stay open for a while.
Okay.
And then we'll come back and vote on this once we've heard from the any other comments that are submitted, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Simon. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Christine, for logging in.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep. All right, so I guess back to the staff report. I think we've wrapped up our conversation on the urban community forestry grant. So next up was the planning commission on the Glazer parcel. What happened with that last night?
So this is really just an informational, not a sort of discussion.
Yeah.
What the Glazers have submitted their specific plan to the planning commission for development of the Glazer parcel. There was a sort of 45-minute discussion about it at the planning commission last night. We'll probably be putting that video on, uploading it shortly, so everyone can go and have a look at that and look at what was discussed. You probably heard from Melinda back in this spring or the winter, I think it was. The specific plan is sort of a section of the bylaw that allows an applicant to develop a very specific set of development regulations through an amendment to the regulations in the town plan that allows them to sort of bring forward development or do something that otherwise might not 100% comply with the regulations, but they do have to provide a substantial community benefit for the town. Given us their initial plan, which does show a sort of significant area of wetlands in the south near the windswept farm, which could be deeded to the town. That would allow the windswept farm to continue to operate should the town continue to choose to do that. And it also includes, I think, 11 acres up by Mountain View Road that is within the scenic view shed that would also remain free of development and be given to the town. And so the town would have to have a conversation about what it wanted to do with that land, just leaving it as is, developing it into a park, developing it into like a pedestrian walk. That's sort of to be decided. So at the PC meeting last night, definitely watch it for yourselves. There's probably only about 30 minutes of sort of relevant discussion. The PC did vote to that there might be a substantial benefit involved here. And what that does is it allows the project to move forward to an initial community meeting, which is scheduled to be held on November 15th at the Planning Commission that day, to hear feedback from the community and on what they think about the proposal and what they think, the substantial benefit should be. And then that would take forward into I think it's called an advisory committee, at which we would probably want a member of the Planning Commission to be part of that advisory committee. Of the Conservation Commission to be part of that advisory committee to represent the board's interests on that.
All right, thanks, Simon. So we'll look for that video, and November 15th, that planning commission meeting sounds like it would be a good one to log into. And then at some point, maybe if the project continues to move forward, we may need to select a member from this group to serve on that special committee, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Next up on the staff report list is the annex update. What's happening with that?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know how much you guys follow, like what happens to projects after you sort of give your views on them. But this is a pretty large subdivision, so I thought maybe I could just
this is the one that was just covered in the Observer last week, right?
Yeah. So I thought it might be good just to show you what changes that have been made. So I think you may remember back in July, August, you made a number of recommendations to the DRB. Most of them, well, a lot of them were fairly sort of regular recommendations, but also talking about signage in the watershed protection buffers to notify people of them, using the bird boxes as a mitigation along the buffer for mitigation for removal of that core habitat. So the applicant since that has made like a range of changes in response to feedback from staff, and just focusing on the ones that sort of affect the conservation interests. You may recall that. So this is the. So this is the annex. So this is Bowdry Lane coming off here. This is Alpine with the Vermont Credit Union, and then this is where it comes out onto Dunmore Lane and Chelsea Place. So I'm sort of developing this area. This is the original submission. So you may recall that the multi-use path sort of wound through the wetland and sort of threaded the needle in terms of the wetland and its buffer, and also provided sort of access to that path. So there was an actual wetland crossing there, but also impacts on the buffer through there, and you can see it skirting the future path and then coming back out through the buffer and joining back in on Alpine Drive here. And we also had some minor impacts from sort of a future street that they were looking at building, Cabo Street, which sort of intruded into the wetland buffer here. There was also sort of a lot of other changes. So they've looked at developing the design for the future park and the neighborhood green. They've sort of realigned Eden Lane to make it more, give it more right angle. I can probably actually show you rather than just talking about it. So they met with the state wetlands people, and one of our recommendations was that they provide sort of evidence of their state wetlands permit, and sort of what the upshot of that conversation is that this multi-use path has now been redirected away from the wetlands. So now we just have a primitive path that comes through the buffer, a boardwalk crossing, and then another primitive path to join in with the park, which then sort of comes out back onto Alpine Drive. The multi-use path has been directed through here, and Cabo Lane itself has been removed from the project to reduce that impact on the wetland buffer there. So I think the upshot of the VT wetlands discussion was that they didn't feel that they could justify building a multi-use path through the wetlands, and it should be restricted to less intensive development, namely the primitive path and the boardwalk. And so what the upshot of this is, it sort of resulted in a lot less impact on the wetlands. We've also had a number of other changes. So they've looked at sort of realigning Eden Lane just to create more of a right angle and try and cut down on speeding through there. We've got a sort of a greater deal of design over the neighborhood parks, which now includes details of the public art. And I believe that VTrans are now looking at providing a signalized junction at Alpine Lane to help people getting out from this development onto Route 2A, which they weren't doing previously.
All right, thanks, Simon. So what are the next steps for this project?
So the DRB is going to hear it again next week.
Oh, next week already. Okay.
Yeah, they're likely going to make their decision there on it. So we should know then what the decision is.
Okay.
Okay.
And then that'll be, so the decision at the DRB will be the final approval for the project to go forward.
pretty much.
Yep.
The
Okay.
intricacies of the development review system are long-winded, but yes.
Okay. All
Mm.
right. Thanks. That's all I see in the staff report. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. So our next meeting will be October 19th. Pre-app for Snowdrift Lane, and then Brownell Mountain, and then the forestry grant that we talked about earlier, and then agritourism.
Yeah, so I'll reach out to Lisa or Hans and see if anyone wants to come and talk about what we've been doing and any ways that they can help us. On Brownell Mountain, I'd just like to do a bit more research on that before putting it on. I know that there was a lot of discussion about this dating back over several years about what could and couldn't be done.
Yeah, so this is like someone's interested in reopening the conversation about a trail network on Brownell. Is that what it was?
Yeah. And I think it looks like there was a long history to this.
Yep.
And, I guess, there's no harm in having a conversation about it to see whether strategically this is something that the town thinks is a good idea at this stage.
Was it for walking or mountain biking? or
It'll be
anything?
for all uses is what they suggested.
I thought it was for hiking and walking, not for mountain biking.
Well, it'd be hiking, walking, and I think they were envisaging mountain biking.
Oh.
But it would be, there's a lot to discuss and unpack in that.
Yeah, this is one of the
access.
few areas in town where hunting is still allowed, right? Isn't this one of the few areas where hunting is still allowed on town property?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. And I think that's why the conversation didn't move forward.
Mhm.
The last time it came around, the Conservation Commission is for that reason.
Yeah.
I think the parking was still a pretty big issue too. Yeah.
Parking access, yeah.
Yeah.
So I will not be at the next meeting. So.
Okay.
All right. Happy to let you all go 20 minutes early.
Right.
There's nothing else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.